Hey guys, I'm Chris, your real estate problem solver. Now, if you're a first-time home buyer and you've kind of been curious as to what kind of maintenance are you going to have to do to maintain your first house, well, this video is for you. We're going to go over a few things that you need to be aware of and some of the regular maintenance that you're going to be looking forward to when you buy your first house. And we're going to use this house as an example because there's a few things in here that we found that you definitely don't want to have happen. So if you're looking to find out what all kind of maintenance you're going to need to do to your first house, let's go and we'll show you how to do it. All right, so if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I've mentioned this quite a few times, and it's one of my pet peeves. Stuff on the house, okay? If you've got, ventilation, you know how things get dried out because they've been exposed to the air. Well, with your house, you want that to happen, okay? When you've got trees and bushes and shrubs, those kinds of things block the wind, which is a good thing when it's cold, like it is right now. But it also slows down the air to where the moisture stays in that area. So for example, this upper vent right here is completely clogged up with vines and ivies. And down here, we've got the vines and ivies that are real close to the house. And this blocks the wind from coming through. It blocks the air from ventilating, so moisture stays here. And when moisture sits around for a long time, you end up with mold, you end up with rot. And these are the kind of things you need to fix before it gets too bad. So in this case, all these shrubs need to be trimmed off. The ivy need to be pulled off the walls, and all this needs to be opened up to where it's got some air ventilating through here to keep the house nice and dry. Because with a house, moisture is your enemy. Now this is a fine example. Now on this house, it's got a metal roof and the gutters and all this stuff is filled up with leaves, and it's got to be cleaned out, or else the gutter doesn't do its job, and this water will end up washing over and kind of flooding this area where it shouldn't have to. The bushes are touching the house, and eventually that's going to start pushing into the gutters and pushing into the roof, and it's going to start damaging it. If you turn around and look at the other side, this tree right here, I'm familiar with this house. This roof was put on in like 2018, something like that, and this is 2024. So this tree has grown up since then, and it's just about touching the gutter. So this should have been cut back a long time ago. Also on this tree, if you look closer, this tree has grown into the fencing. So this chain link fence is no longer moving because the tree's grown around it. So this tree's gonna have to be cut off on both sides to get this fencing moved out of the way, so we can get down and shovel all these leaves and get this all cleaned up. So all this could have been taken care of a couple years ago when this tree was smaller and easier to manage, if the people that lived here took care of it like they were supposed to. All right, so just like I was talking about with bushes and shrubberies and all that on the side of the house can hold moisture, it can also start holding dirt, which ends up causing staining and nastiness on the side of the house. Well, leaves and yard debris like this right here can do the exact same thing too. It can hold moisture, it can cause mold and mildew to collect, which means you've got to get a pressure washer out here and clean this up, or you can just sweep it away now and get it out of here before it starts collecting moisture. Because once it sits here for a little while, after it rains, it's going to start collecting dirt. Then you've got dirt in here, then you've got moisture, and the first time that it freezes, all this is going to find a crack, and it's going to swell that crack up, and it's going to make that crack bigger. So you want to get this stuff out of here before the weather gets cold like it is now, because we just had our first frost for the year this morning, and eventually this stuff is going to leak down into any tiny little cracks and make them bigger. So you want to sweep all this stuff away and just keep it cleaned up. Another thing is walk around the house and take a look and see what all around the house needs to be fixed. Even if you're a homebody and you stay inside the house, get outside and, you know, show some pride in the house that you just bought. You know, look around and take a look at it, inspect it. Stuff like this right here, the downspout has disconnected itself from the house. This is one of those things where you can say, yeah, okay, I'll keep it in mind and I'll get rid of it later. I'll take care of it later. Don't do that. If it's Saturday, you're not doing anything, just go ahead and fix it now. Because one, I'll get you later turns into a dozen I get you laters, and then all of a sudden you're behind the times and you've got a mountain of stuff that's got to be fixed that either A, has to be fixed now because it's going to be freezing tonight, or you're going to be going out of town and it's got to be fixed before you leave, or even worse, it's been sitting here all this time and it's steadily gotten worse. Now, just like your mortgage is compounding interest against you, the chore list will compound interest against you too. So any of this little stuff is simple, takes 10-15 minutes. Go ahead and take care of it now as soon as you find it, or else it's going to end up stacking up against you. And while we're here, let's take a look at the air conditioner. Now this is something that's not supposed to happen either. All this right here gets down inside of that air conditioner and it causes problems. Now, with an air conditioner, it's very simple to keep it up. You change out the air filter every 30 to 60 days, and every 6 months, you come out here with a garden hose and some simple green or purple power, and you spray down these ribs. You spray them down, and you wash this out. Now, unless you know what you're doing, don't use a pressure washer, because right here, where the veins have been bent over, that was somebody that knocked against it and it bends it. And the more these ribs get bent, the less air can go through it. And the whole point behind this thing is for air to go through it and wick the heat away, because this is an air conditioner. It takes heat out of the house. So you want to wash this with a garden hose, just a basic garden hose and some purple power, or spend the money, have a HVAC guy come out and do a spring servicing on the unit. It's a lot cheaper than having to buy a whole new unit, I promise you. And I'm getting ready to show you why. All right, now if you are a first-time home buyer and you buy a house that's on a crawl space, this is something you're definitely going to need to know about. Underneath the house is, between the floor and the ground, you've got your crawl space. Well, this crawl space has your air conditioner, it has dirt, and it's going to have moisture in here. Make sure that you have a good vapor barrier all throughout the bottom. And if it's bundled up or bunched up like this one is, there's a lot of open spaces around here that have and that are exposed to the open dirt. Go ahead and get that vapor barrier pushed back out and spread back around. If you got to pay somebody to do it, because that's what keeps the moisture away from the flooring of the house. And we're getting ready to show you another issue that is involved with that. So if we're talking about keeping the crawl space ventilated and moisture free, well, there's no such thing, but as low moisture as possible, you definitely want to be talking about your crawl space vents. Now this right here is your vent, and there's going to be one every 12-14 feet all the way around the house if you're on a crawl space. Now, a lot of people will say go close them up in the wintertime so you can keep the heat in. That to me is a personal preference. If you've got good insulation underneath the crawl space, then leave these open, let the air flow through the house, let the air push the moisture out from under the house, because that moisture is going to cause problems. Moisture is your big Achilles heel when it comes to owning a house. So make sure that there's good ventilation, not breezy tornado, but at least ventilation and keep a little bit of circulation in the air, and make sure that moisture gets out of here. Now we're going to go inside and just show you what happens when too much moisture becomes a problem. And of course, while you're outside, you got to make sure that the roof actually looks good too. So in this case, we've got a metal roof on this house, which holds up a whole lot longer than a shingle roof would, but you still want to walk around and see if there's any dented metal, any metal peeling up, any wind damage, because wind gets underneath the metal roof, it'll peel it up and it'll pull it right off the screws. So if they did it right and they put the screws in the proper placements like they're supposed to, it'll hold up for a long time. But you still want to walk around to make sure that there's no leaves collecting in the valleys, any trash on the roof, any dirt collecting, or any banged areas where a limb has hit it and twisted it and dented it up, because metal roofs are colored these days and most of them are painted with an enamel. And if you crease them or you break them or you twist them, that enamel can eventually crack and water gets into there and it'll start rusting. So even a metal roof needs to be checked on. Now as for a shingle roof, make sure that you just look at the lines, make sure that the lines are all nice and straight. See if any of the shingles are actually popping up a little bit. If it is, and there's probably a nail trying to kind of back out, they will do that. Look at the color of the roof. If it's a nice uniform color, chances are it's pretty good. If it's starting to show streaks like a river's been running through it for months, then chances are the asphalt that's in those shingles are starting to wear out, and it's probably time to start looking at getting another roof put on. Now next on the list is walking around the outside of the property and checking on your power lines. Now this is the power lines to this house, and as you can see, it's going right through the woods, and every single one of those branches runs a risk of falling on those power lines and you know, killing the power to the house. Now this is not necessarily going to be your responsibility, but like this line is going right through the middle of this tree branch right here. So you do need to call the power company and let them know that there's branches around the lines and those lines need to get cleared, because the first storm that comes through and breaks one of those branches off could hit the power lines and you'll be out of power for however long it takes for them to come out and get it fixed. So make sure to check that too. Even if it's not your responsibility, it's one of those things that you need to be aware of, so you can tell the proper people to come out and make sure that it's fixed. Oh, while we're on the subject of utilities that are or are not your responsibility, most utility companies are going to tell you you're responsible for the power from the meter into the house. From the meter outside the house is going to be the power company. Same thing with the water. City water coming up to the meter is going to be the city's responsibility, but once it passes that meter, even if it's in the front yard, they're going to tell you that it's your responsibility. So if there's a leak or there's a break in the water line coming into the house from the meter to the house, is going to be up to you to fix. All right, so I told you that we were going to talk about the keeping the moisture down in the crawl space and why it's so important. Well, the air conditioner and keeping it clean, if you don't keep it clean, it's going to collect dirt, and if you don't keep the dirt off of it, it's going to end up freezing over on you. Another thing that's going to cause it to freeze over on you is this. This is the air filter that came out of this air conditioning system. And this air conditioning system has not had a new filter in quite some time, obviously. What has happened with this is they did not change out the air filter like they were supposed to. And when it got all clogged up, the air conditioning unit out there doesn't circulate as much Freon, and the unit in here can't push as much air through the house. So since the air circulated and didn't circulate as well as it could have or well as it should have, it's been doing this over a long period of time, and they neglected this house for quite some time, and this is what they ended up with. Now this is the results of apparently from what the contractor is telling us, is the air conditioning ducts that run air to these registers. They didn't blow as much air as they were supposed to keep themselves dry, and they collected moisture inside the duct, and eventually it started spraying water out of the ducts. Also, since the air ducts are cool on the inside and there's hot air on the outside, well, guess what? They started sweating. They started getting condensation on the outside, and all that started building up moisture over time, and you end up with something like this. This entire area has gotten saturated with water and rotted itself out completely. Now, the really bad part about this is a 1970s 2-inch oak hardwood, real hardwood floor. What that means is this stuff is just about indestructible. This is what it is. It is thick hardwood, and this stuff will take a lot of damage. It'll take a lot of beatings. You can sand this down and polyurethane it, and it looks beautiful. You can look at other videos and see how good this stuff looks, but they don't use it much anymore, and having to replace this right here is going to end up costing a lot of money. And well, the chances of us being able to find, or the owner being able to find the proper lumber to get all this replaced is going to be a hell of a challenge. So when you're taking care of your air conditioner, make sure that you don't end up with something like this, okay? Only takes 5 minutes, and a $2 air filter caused all that right there. All right, the next thing that you might want to keep in mind when you're maintaining your first house is the kids. Unfortunately, kids will be kids, but if you're not planning on living in that house for the rest of your life, then that means chances are you're probably going to sell it, in which case you're going to call me, and so I can be your real estate agent and make sure it gets sold for the best price that you can. But I digress. If you are going to have kids in a house, they are going to get rough and tumble, they're going to get wild, and sometimes they will end up causing holes like this. So make sure that if you are having kids in the house, let them know, communicate with them, and make sure that they understand that they can have all the fun that they want to, but if they're going to tear up the house and leave marks on the wall that you've got to fix or you've got to repaint, then make sure that there's going to be some consequences, because all this stuff right here takes away from the resale value of the house when you eventually decide to sell. So the best way to take care of that is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Just go through the extra communications and the extra effort to make sure that they don't do it to begin with, or else you'll end up having to repaint all this, and that can end up costing a lot of money on top of patching holes in the wall. So the next thing you need to keep an eye out for if you're a first-time homeowner is water leaks. Now, it's pretty simple to keep up with water leaks on the outside of the house, but on the inside, just make sure to look underneath these sinks every now and then and run the water and see if there's any leaks. If it's a slight leak, you can usually tell when you take a paper towel and just wipe it around the pressure lines, or if you run the sink and let the water drain through the pipes and you check the drain lines and it's dripping while the sink is running, then you know you've got a leak. These are real simple things that you can catch really fast, and especially with water, again, like moisture, the faster that you find the problem, the faster you get it fixed, the less problems it'll be and the less expensive it'll be. And also, if you are a homeowner that has a house that's not in town, now, it doesn't really matter if you're in city water or if you have a well on the property. Either way, you're still gonna run the risk of pipes freezing, and if they freeze, they're gonna bust. So a simple little fix to do that is if it's getting below, I'd say about 25 degrees, you know, until you get a good feel for it, it's just simple. That's it. Just let the water run, let the water drip. Moving water doesn't freeze as fast as still water. So if you just run the water just a little bit, and it doesn't take much, just a little trickle here, that's enough to keep the water moving through the night. When you go to bed, you won't wake up to a busted line. Now this isn't necessarily a maintenance thing, but it might be helpful in case anything ever does happen. Now, first-time home buyers usually don't notice about this, but this is the hot side of the water heater. This is the cold side. Now when the water comes in, it goes into the water heater, and then it goes back out to the rest of the house. Now the water that's coming in to get heated up, if anything happens to this water heater, or if it starts leaking, it can cause a lot of problems and cause a lot of damage really quick. So if the incoming line does not have a shutoff valve, it might be a good idea for you or hire somebody to just come in and add a shutoff valve to the incoming line. That way, if anything happens to the water heater, you can get in here and you can get it turned off quickly, and you won't have nearly as much water damage as you would otherwise. And like I said, this is the basics of the repairs and maintenance type stuff that you want to do. Main thing is keep the moisture down. Main thing is to make sure that you look over the house, and any issues that pop up, go ahead and get them fixed. Now, if you've got a historical house, then I've got a video over here that will go through the stuff that is specific to buying a historical house. Other than that, congratulations on buying your first house. And if you haven't bought it yet, I've got another series of videos that goes through getting a lender, picking the neighborhood, and building your credit. So I hope this helps, guys, and I'll see you on the next video.